Ask me about privilege, and I'll tell you about being poor. I'll regale you with stories of sandcastles along the shores of Lake Erie. Tiny feet sinking into sand, I hand young black boy my bucket. Boast to parents of good deed done. Unzipped smile, stitched from ear to ear, wag tail and await my reward. Pat on head, posing as Nobel Peace Prize for preschool. I'll tell you about recognition for being human. Blue ribbons for basic decency. Ask me about privilege, and I won't tell tales of invisibility. I'll tell you about being seen. I'll tell you about, have you been helped, sir? I'll tell you about benefit of the doubt. About being last place looked when anything turns up missing. I'll tell you about never being accused of switching the tag of good old boy discounts. I'll tell you about having credit, but not needing it because your word is as good as gold. I'll tell you about getting high. I'll tell you about collecting government checks to run dispensaries while brown-skinned dealers rot in prison. I'll tell you about written warnings, let alone warning shots. Ask me about privilege, and I'll tell you about not knowing the fear in a mother's eyes each time she watched her son, brother, father, mother walk out the door. I'll tell you about never having to worry that the blood of my blood might one day be kaleidoscoped across pavement by police. Street mural, ready-made to hang in museum as a future reminder of our so-called progress. I won't tell you of this mother's struggle. I'll tell you about numbness, indifference. I'll tell you about choices. Ask me about privilege, and I'll tell you about having the option to never have to think about any of these things. I'll tell you about being tired of talking about race, despite having never engaged in the discussion in the first place. I'll tell you about power buttons. I'll tell you about being able to minimize, monitor, and make it all vanish like Facebook activists at a rally. Ask me about privilege, and I'll tell you about being able to die with dignity. No dirty laundry to be aired in headline above obituary. I'll tell you about whitewash. I'll tell you about bleach so strong it can wash away your sins, like preachers and presidents. I'll tell you about appropriation, about style and jazz and Jesus. I'll tell you about capitalizing on the oppression of others. Ask me about privilege, and I'll tell you about anti-gravity, sky's the limit. I'll tell you of never knowing glass ceilings. I'll tell you about being the sun in a vacuum.